Welcome back, guys. This lesson is going to be over section 9.2 on finding circumference. This one is not a required DIY. However, many of you will probably need to do this DIY, at least watch the video on this, so that you will understand how to use circumference and how to find circumference on some of your later assignments and on your required DIY, which is the card sort involving circumference and area. So, when we're given diameter, we have a special formula that we use. Now, earlier in the section 4.4, you learned that the ratio of the circumference to the diameter is C over D is the same for all circles. Okay, remember all circles are similar. So this ratio is called pi. We use this symbol most of the time. Sometimes it's written out. And you can approximate it as 3.14 or 22 over 7 like we discussed earlier. You can use pi to find the formula for circumference. So, through all of this work right here, we're solving the equation for circumference. We're solving for C. So, how do we get rid of dividing by D? We multiply by D. So, if I multiply the left side of my equation by D, I have to multiply the right side of my equation by D. That's what's happening right here. So that these two are going to cancel each other out. And we have our circumference formula, which is circumference equals pi times diameter. So, for number 1, find the circumference of the circle to the nearest hundredth. Use 3.14 or 22 over 7 for pi. So, first thing we need to do is we need to identify our diameter. That's going to be right here across the center. Remember, our diameter goes all the way across. So, now we're going to fill in our answers. So, we're going to fill in 8 for diameter. We're going to fill in 3.14 for pi. Now, notice the change. Whenever you have equal sign, and it has pi on this side, that is an exact answer, because this represents the whole number for pi. Pi is a irrational number. It never, ever repeats or ends. They still have not found the end. I don't remember how many decimal places it is, but it just keeps going forever. So notice when we put in 3.14, which is just an approximation for pi, it becomes a little approximately squiggly lines. So you have to be very careful. If they want an exact value, you're going to leave the pi symbol in. If you want an approximation, like you're rounding to the nearest hundredth, then you're going to put in the approximately lines. So that's why it changes right here. So then we're going to do 3.14 times 8, and when you multiply, you get 25.12. So your circumference is going to be about 25.12. So, using this example, do reflection problems 1 and 2, and then when you come back, your answer will be up on the screen so you can check your work. So, number 1 says, what value of pi could you use to estimate the circumference? 3. So, anytime we want to see if our answer makes sense, we could always estimate to see, make sure maybe we multiplied our decimals correctly, because I know sometimes we accidentally put the decimal in the wrong place. So if we multiplied it by 3, it would make it a lot easier. So 2 says checking for reasonableness. How do you know your answer is reasonable? Well, if we plug in 3 for pi and do 3 times 8, it gives us 24. So since 24 is pretty close to 25.12, then you're probably on the right track. Now, if you plugged in 3 and you get 24, but your answer was, say, 251.2, then you would know, okay, wait a minute, I've made an error somewhere. Either I multiplied wrong or I put my decimal in wrong. It just, something has gone awry to where you need to go back and check your work. So always estimating your answer is definitely a good idea. So once again, pause your video. Do your turn number 3 is where you're actually going to be finding circumference. And try it out. See how you do. Make sure you go back to the example and refer to it if you need the extra help. So, number 3 says, find the circumference of the circle to the nearest hundredth. So, once again, we're putting in 3.14 for pi. So, we're going to plug in. We have circumference equals pi times diameter. We substitute our numbers, so 3.14 times 11. This is all of my work over here, and I end up getting 34.54 centimeters. Now notice it's not squared or anything, it's just centimeters, because it's how far is it all the way around the outside of the circle, just like if we were walking in a big circle. So now we have another formula here, and this one is for when we're finding circumference using radius. And you will be given both. You could be asked to do circumference with radius or circumference with diameter at any time, so you need to be equally as comfortable with both of these formulas. They are very, very similar. So, since the diameter of a circle is the same as 2 times the radius, it's double the radius, we can always just substitute in 2r instead of d, so 2 times the radius. So instead of pi d, we can have pi times 2r. And we usually put our number first, that's our coefficient, so we call it circumference equals 2 pi r. So these are the exact same formula. Notice they don't look the same, but they mean the same thing. So be very careful. Whichever number you are given, use that formula. It's nothing fancy. If they give you diameter, use pi times diameter. If they give you the radius, use 2 pi r. Make it easy on yourself. Alright, so on number 2, or example 2. An irrigation sprinkler waters a circular region with a radius of 14 feet. Find the circumference of the region watered by the sprinkler. Use 22/7 for pi. Alright, this is going to be a little trickier because we're going to leave it in fraction form. So, here's our formula. We always write our formula first. Then we do substitute our numbers in. We plug in 14 for radius. And then for pi, we're going to substitute in 22/7. Notice it goes from equal signs to the little wavy sign, the approximately sign, because it changes. You're substituting in for that symbol now. So, remember when we multiply fractions, we have to turn this to 2/1 and turn this to 14/1. So it's going to end up looking like this when you work it out. 2/1 times 22/7 times 14/1. And remember, when we multiply across. So 2 times 22, and then that number times 14 will go on the top, and then 1 times 7 times 1 will go on the bottom, and then you just simplify your fraction. And when you do, you'll end up getting about 88. So the circumference of your region watered by the sprinkler is about 88 feet. So, pause your video, do the reflection question and the your turn question, and when you come back, your answers will be up so that you can check your work. Alright, for number 4, analyze relationships. When is it logical to use 22/7 instead of 3.14 for pi? So, the most logical time to use 22/7 instead of 3.14 is when the radius or diameter is a multiple of 7. So, whenever you multiply all of these, you're going to be able to simplify a lot easier. Some of you guys are still just not that comfortable with fractions. You're going to need to get that way because in later math you will definitely be using it. But for now, like when you do the your turn, if you substitute in 3.14, you're going to be just fine. You should end up getting a better answer. Now, if you leave it 22/7 though, you are going to get a much better answer. You're going to end up getting 132. It actually ends up being a little bit cleaner work than multiplying by the decimal. But either way, it works just as well. So you do whichever one is easier for you. Just remember, whenever your radius or diameter is a multiple of 7, the fractional way is going to give you much better numbers to deal with. Alright, last section. So using circumference. How will we use this given a special circumstance? So we can use the appropriate circumference formula to find the radius or diameter of a circle. We can use that information to solve all kinds of real-world problems. A lot of things dealing with tablecloths and party renting and landscaping to all kinds of stuff. Anything that uses circles is going to use circumference. So this was a pond. So it says a circular pond has a circumference of 628 feet. A model boat is moving directly across the pond along a radius at a rate of 5 feet per second. How long does it take the boat to get from the edge of the pond to the center? So, first thing we have to do is find the radius of the pond. So, we're using 2 pi r because we use radius, and we're going to substitute in our numbers. So, we have 628 because they give us the circumference. We have 2 times pi, 3.14, times r. That's what we're looking for. So, here's where our equation solving skills that we learned earlier this year are going to come in handy. So, when we multiply 2 times 3.14, we're going to get 6.28 times radius equals 628, or is approximately 628. So how do we get rid of multiplying by 6.28? We do the inverse operation. We divide by 6.28. And if I divide the right side of my equation, I have to divide the left side of my equation. And, oh, look how nice and neat our numbers worked out for us. Our radius is going to be approximately 100 feet. So, the next step, find the time it takes the boat to get from the edge of the pond to the center along the radius. Divide the radius of the pond by the speed of the boat. So our radius is 100. He's going 5 feet per second. So it's going to take him about 20 seconds to get to the center of the pond. This is the kind of questioning that you guys can expect to see. So make sure, once again, that you're really comfortable with your equation solving, because you are most definitely going to need it. So pause your video, try 6, 7, and 8 on your own, and then when you come back, your answers will be here. Alright, so on number 6, it says Dante checks the answer to step 1 by multiplying it by 6 and comparing it with a given radius. Explain why Dante's estimation method works. Use it to check step 1. So, since pi is approximately 3, our circumference is 2 pi r, 6 times r, because 2 times 6, or 2 times 3 is 6, if we do 6 times 100, it's close to 628, so it seems pretty legit. If we plug all of our numbers in, it works out pretty well. So it says, number 7, suppose the model boat were traveling at a rate of 4 feet per second. How long would it take the model boat to get from the edge of the pond to the center? So instead of doing 100 divided by 5, we'd have to do 100 divided by 4, which would give us about 25 seconds. Now, for number 8, a circular garden has a circumference of 44 yards. Lars is digging a straight line along the diameter of the garden at a rate of 7 yards per hour. How many hours will it take him to dig across the garden? So, use your formulas. Okay, plug in. I've got 44 equals 3 times diameter. Divide both sides by 3, and your diameter is approximately 15. So then when you divide that by 7, you're going to get about 2 hours. Now it's asking you about, so if your answer is a little bit different, but it's still close to 2, then you're probably just fine. Alright, now if you got a different answer, if you got, like 8 or 7, then you definitely need to go back and check your work and see where you made your mistake. So, that is your section on finding circumference. Now, if you choose to do the DIY that goes with this, it will be the guided practice. And whenever you get your answers, come and show me, and then I'll let you check them with the answer key. Good luck!